Welcome to the Oh So Spurs podcast, where we have just beaten Brighton 2-1 with another late win. And our odds have gone from 0.01% of the title to 0.02%. I'm not giving up on those predictions. With us, we've got a full house with Stu. How are you, mate?
I'm all good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. We've got Si. How are you?
Fantastic, mate. Fantastic. Cheers.
Good. Deej, you doing well?
I'm doing all right.
A little bit early for you. And Johnny, how are you, mate?
Oh, still buzzing after yesterday, pal. How are you?
I'm doing very good. Yeah,
Good,
I went
good.
from my weekend being ruined to my weekend being made in the space of 30 seconds. So, yes. But we'll unpack that performance because it's definitely some mixed feedback coming in from the fan base. And we'll discuss the squad as it looks to be finally getting pretty strong again with a decent bench. Then we'll be going over your questions. And then we will be previewing our next game against... Palace is on the 3rd. Who have we got next? Wolves at home. So another home game, which is going to be absolutely crucial. So we'll start with Si. I'll start with you because you were one of the people at the game and you were there celebrating at the end. But
it was good to hook up. Good to see you, Jim and Johnny again. And when I think I'll start at the end. Maybe when I got down and Johnny was there, I was like, Jesus, mate, we nicked that, didn't we? And actually, like that's what it felt like. And then when I got home and like this morning, I looked at the stats and I thought, that doesn't look like we nicked the game. That looked like we were in total control of the game, but it didn't feel like that when you were in the ground. And maybe there's some of that emotion. You don't catch all of the action that you see on the TV. So when I was on my journey back to Basel from London today, I watched the match again. So I logged on and watched the match again. And actually, we were much more in control of that game than it felt like when we were there. And, you know, some of the subs on all of the major stats, we outperformed Brighton massively on all of those. And I think that it just felt like we were a little bit off the pace in the first half. We gave the ball away quite cheaply. And what Brighton looked to do is they passed the ball around so well and open you up so well with those one-touch passes. That it felt, I think, a little bit more open than maybe it actually was. So it felt like we nicked it at the end, which, listen, 96-minute goal, it does feel like you've nicked 2 points rather than, and they'll feel like they've dropped 2 points. But I think overall, we might just have deserved it. We might have just nicked it in terms of in terms of the overall play. But Brighton will feel like that they should have had a point out of that. But again, at the end of the game, I know you had to leave early, Jim, and missed another.
I wasn't going to bring that up this time.
Missed another late goal, but that South stand at the end just didn't empty. It was full right to the end. They were the players there again clapping, and I love when Ange he comes round and he's the last one to leave the pitch, and he comes round and he claps all of the stadium, and just the whole place was going mental. And it was my brother's. I took my brother. It's his birthday coming up, and I took him as a bit of a treat. And it's his first game this season. He's like, wow, he couldn't believe the difference between last season and this season and the atmosphere. And he said, I've never seen the South Stand that full. You know, 5-10 minutes after the final whistle. So again, over the moon with the result and what a difference a bench makes, and we'll talk about that, I guess, a little bit later. But that was the defining piece for me. So over the moon, very happy. Good to see you two there, and we had a good laugh before and after the game. So all round good. Yeah.
I'm going to say "told you so" to a lot of people on this bit, where people's going, "I want Sonny to stay in the Asian Cup, so he'll be happy." We'd have drawn that game without him. In hindsight, I wonder if people who said, would you rather he won the Asian Cup but we dropped 2 points in that game, or came back early and we got the full 3? But anyway, that's a discussion for later as we discuss the bench and everything else. But Johnny, you were also at the ground. Were you similar to how sad I felt? That weirdly felt like we were on the back foot for a lot of the game, and then you get home and you get a different perspective when you rewatch it?
It's interesting because I remember after the City game, and we've definitely got a new negative Nelly in town. Like old Fabio Paratici there is like saying that we got battered by City, and then yesterday he was saying we nicked it. And I was thinking, okay, we were lucky to get a goal late on, or luck. I'm not sure that's the right word, but obviously a late winner like that, you kind of feel wow, like even more elated than you would if you'd scored the winner in the 75th minute or something. But I thought on balance we deserved to win the game. I thought that we were definitely off the pace in the first half. I thought like it wasn't really an Ange performance in the first half. Very, very slow, quite tentative. I felt that it was just like that final third again, where the balls just the passes were the wrong weight, or they were overhit or underhit. And I mean, I think that you're right, Jim. The difference was Sonny, and I think it was good to see. I was pleased to see Decky coming on, and I've got a major issue with people having a pop at Decky all the time. I think it's really, really overreacting. I think it's really disproportionate. I know he's not been at his best, but I thought he was one of our best performers for the first few months of the season. I think he had a little bit of an off time, like he's just not hitting the same heights. I know everyone goes on about his pace, and if he was fast, he would be incredible. But I thought he was, when he came off just after the equaliser, I felt I was disappointed he came off with that much time left on the clock. I thought he was really hitting the stride. He went on some really effective and incisive runs. So I thought that he's somebody who deserves to get a bit of respect yesterday. But yeah, the first half we were poor. I guess we were poor. Even Van de Ven. Van de Ven definitely bailed us out a few times, as he always does with his pace. But obviously he gave away the penalty. There was, right at the beginning of the game, they had a really good opportunity in the first minute, and Van de Ven lost the ball on the halfway line. And it was, I guess, an exciting game to go to, where you've got two teams that do want to attack, two teams that do play out from the back, two teams that are very similar in their styles. And I think we've just, when we can bring the lads off the bench, I presume it was another player who really made a difference too. You sort of think, okay, well, we're now just seeing kind of almost full strength Tottenham. The lads who are still not coming back to where they're capable of, like obviously Matters is still a bit off his best because he's only just coming back. Same with I suppose who else? There's somebody else who's just come back.
Basuma?
Yeah.
I think Bentancur is looking a little bit rusty. He's looking a bit rusty, isn't he?
Yeah, he's looking a bit rusty. But we're still beating Brighton in that situation. I think there's people need to just take a deep breath and actually realize how well suited or how well situated we are. I think I'm really confident and I'm really positive about how things are going. Yeah, there's a lot of things that could have been better, but it's a brilliant win, and there was a lot of really good things in there. And there was a lot of Richarlison. Maybe he didn't score yesterday, and I know he gave away the ball a few times, but he was flying. Like some of his interchange and quick delivery, he's moving the ball quickly, and he's not hesitating. He's even was it the win? I think it was in the winning goal. And it was. He picked the ball, did a little 1-2, played it to Maddison. Maddison made an incredible pass back to him, and then he released Sonny. There's a lot of players who did a lot of really good things. There's just quite a few mistakes in as well. So I think there's a lot to be really positive about. And even last, I know I'm monologuing a bit here, but Martin Keown, of all people, on Match of the Day was really bigging up Tottenham. I thought it's a bit weird when you've got in our own WhatsApp group a lot of people saying, "Oh, Ange has been found out" and stuff, and then you got Martin Keown on Match of the Day saying "Oh yeah, Postecoglou is transformational," and he is, bigging up his philosophy and the fact that Tottenham's winner was a thing of beauty, which it was, because that move was superb. Right, I'm going to stop there because I'll talk forever.
What's all this Ange has been found out? It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
Well, we'll pass it on to Stu. What do you think? Do you think Ange is being... can I rephrase that? Is Ange finding... This is the feedback I saw. There was two bits out of those rants that I thought were some criticism worth discussing. Not that I agree with it, but it's worth discussing. Does Ange always start with the same plan? he adapts really well. Actually, his reputation, he doesn't adapt to games, but he clearly does adapt to games and change things. But there was someone said he always starts with the same plan regardless of who you're playing, rather than starting with the plan that's meant to counter your opposition's strengths. But anyway, I'm putting words in your mouth, Stu. You go. What did you make of it and the criticism Ange has had?
I was well annoyed, as I'm sure my tone came across in the WhatsApp group yesterday, that the negativity just does my head in. As soon as anything goes wrong, it's back to, the wheels are coming off, all the players are shit, our coach has been found out. Let's have some, common sense here, people. We've got players who Bentancur, who Ange said came back way too early because we didn't have any players. So obviously he's not match fit. Maddison was off the boil. Again, he's just come back. It's going to take him time to get used to it. Ange, again, that he's found out by, having to deal with players coming back from injury, etc., etc. It's a joke. And let's not forget, Brighton are not a bad side. But it's also not just our WhatsApp group, but also the UAE WhatsApp group. People going on, we need a decent striker. I'm like, what? 9 and 10's not decent, not good enough for you. I mean, as soon as we concede a goal, we go negative. Let's just hold our horses, wait till the game finishes, and then evaluate it. Because even after halftime, HG said it, but I said the same thing in the UAE Spurs group. Yes, we were losing at 1-0, but it's not like we were under the cosh. We weren't creating chances. Richarlison had the chance. Kulu had the chance. Maddison's lovely sun-type shot from outside the area that just curled past the far post. I mean, we could easily have gone in, level at halftime. I think, people need to stop with the knee-jerk negativity and let's, get behind. Like Maddison said after the game in one of his interviews, how, that obviously the South Stand was amazing because the whole stadium is like, it really helps us. Like when you're losing, if you're not getting that support, you start thinking, oh, we're not going to be able to do it. But everyone's cheering you on. And that's what we've got to remember to do all the time. Just get behind. And then at the end of the game, we can criticize, etc. Then coming back to the Ange criticism, I think it wasn't necessarily his tactical errors. I just think our players were off. Like Maddison doing uncharacteristically poor control and poor passes. Van de Ven, as you said, Jim, those were very uncharacteristic errors. And even the penalty, I mean, yes, it was probably a penalty, but it was more that he got stood on rather than he took out the player. I thought Keown's comment in the match of the day was a bit ridiculous. I'm like, he dived in there. I'm like, no, he didn't. It's not like he dove in and was off the ground. He just put his foot down and they came together. And it was an interesting topic, stat that came up that we've conceded the most penalties out of any side in the league, which is 6 penalties, which also I found quite interesting. You wouldn't have expected that.
No, we haven't had a penalty yet, have we, this season?
I don't think so.
We had one.
Okay.
We've had
one.
Yes,
Sun
scored,
versus
didn't
Newcastle.
Yeah.
It didn't matter at all. 3-1 to 4-1 or 3-0 to 4-0? I forget.
So I just think, so just also referring to what you were saying, Sai, before about, whether you're in the stadium or at home, people were saying the same things, whether they were watching on the TV or in the stadium. Everyone was just being negative because he conceded an early goal. I think people need to relax, take it easy, and just watch the game and see how it goes. Because, the XG that I posted in the group straight after the game, I mean, it showed we deserved that win. There was no, ifs and buts about it. We deserved the win. Just as much as we didn't deserve to lose against Everton, we deserved to win this one.
But fundamentally, it was a great game. It was a really good game of football, though. The two sides going at it, wanting to attack, wanting to play the right type of football. I thought it was a really good game of football as well.
Yeah, it was. But just to round that up, so everyone's had their piece on that. So, Deej, the other part of this that was coming up was a few players in particular got a lot more criticism than others, and that was Bentancur, Johnson, Kulusevski, Maddison to some extent as well. I think those were the 4 that seemed to get the lion's share of the stick. Do you think it was fair? Or how did you see it?
I had honestly the privilege of watching this game without being on any kind of social media. Didn't have my phone on, so I wasn't checking the WhatsApp. Obviously wasn't checking Twitter. So I think I had a bit of a different, perspective than because I think it's really easy to let the narrative of a game get shaped by like what you hear other people saying, and especially because for U.S. commentary at least, it's just it's blindingly like anti-Tottenham, so that's never gonna help. Like as soon as we ticked over to the 90th minute, the commentary said, "Oh, 90th minute. We know Tottenham love to concede here," because that's been like the talking point of the week. And then when we scored, they were like, "Brennan Johnson scored. Tottenham, who so often concede in extra time." Like, man, it's like it's ridiculous. But I genuinely thought that Brighton didn't look great. I thought that we were pretty easily the better team. I think that they had they did kind of the reverse. They did what Tottenham do in some games, or in what they were doing, especially when we didn't have our center backs, where we'd come out of the gates flying, and then after like 15-20 minutes, the opponent would get a foothold in the game and never look back. Realistically, like we conceded a penalty, and they had 2-3 good chances outside of that. That's 6 shots total. Like that's not a team that is, especially when you look at our like stats by comparison, that's not a team that's like dominating you. That's not a team that's making you look poor. I mean, obviously we went into halftime down, so no one's going to be super happy about that. But we were creating a decent chunk of chances. On another day, Richarlison finishes that. On another day, Kulusevski finishes that. Or he's given a penalty because he was, pushed in the back. But who cares about that? Lots of things go differently. We go into half tied or 2-1 up, and everyone's like, "Wow, what a great Tottenham performance!" Like the ball bounces differently a couple of times, and I mean, obviously, like the goal of the game is to score, so it's really easy to look at a game and say, "Oh, like this happened," or this, this unlikely goal happened, and attribute that to a good performance. But I think that we were putting ourselves in good positions throughout the entire game. And like eventually the law of large numbers, you're gonna put a chance away or two. And we saw that with honestly both of our goals, because both of our goals were created by at least in part because one of the players that I think got a lot of praise today or yesterday, Van Hecke, Brighton's I want to say reverse Firmino, because he's a center back that sometimes plays striker in the press. But him pushing up out of position opened up the holes that we then took advantage of for both goals. So like all it took was one time getting around his random presses, and you're creating great chances from that almost every time. And I mean, we saw that twice. We created 2 goals from him pressing up when he really didn't need to, and leaving in space behind that someone then had to drop into, that created other pockets of space that we could then exploit, because they can't get everyone back fast enough.
It does.
So
there was a stat though, to your first point of everyone saying Spurs always concede late, blah 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 blah. There was a statistic that we have won the most games from a losing position and lost the most games from a winning position. Mm-hmm. So we've lost 15 points and gained 15 points from winning and losing positions. So there is a form of like uncertainties, unpredictability with us, where I think if we just had that extra goal scorer in the team, we'd put a lot of these games to bed. But when you're just 1 goal up and you're still pushing instead of 2 or 3 goals up, it does always leave that risk. But I don't know about you guys, but the area I thought we were dominated on the pitch was where Bentancur was playing. Was they knew if they swamped him and they could get the ball off him and stop him being able to play out the back, no one else could. It always felt like then I saw Maddison was dropping really deep into that position to try and be the person to play the ball out from the back, because Van der Ven wasn't getting the passes out. And that's where they just really stifled us. And then it left Kulusevski having to work his absolute arse off to push down the flank to get the ball forward. Unfortunately, we made a few really good passes, one from Maddison, one from Kulusevski. That were the key ones in the game. But it was that does concern me, is the Bentancur thing. It's like, are you rusty, or is that injury leaving you adjusting your game and you just need some time to figure that out?
I mean, he tore his ACL. He's gonna take a minute to get back up to full fitness, and we got a great performance from him. A couple of great performances before we had another horror tackle that took him out for another couple of weeks. He's not fully fit. That's pretty easy to see while watching, and I think that we just need to give him time.
I
was going
to say, I also think that we're missing the Basuma, because the Basuma at the start of the season in the 6 is what created spaces. He would get the ball, he would get closed down, and he would get past one or two players, and that created the space for the rest of the players to operate in. So I think once we get Basuma back, and hopefully he returns to his pre-sending off form, I think that'll make the difference. And then Bentancur goes into the 8, and then he's not pressured to play that position where he's got to lose the pressure. I think that'll make a difference.
And our first goal, sorry. I'll go. No, Bentancur, I'm going to just be decisive here. Bentancur.
Sorry, you're next. Don't worry. Got it, Johnny.
No, it's what we were talking about earlier, though. Like these lads have been out for a long time. No, I mean, okay, I'm not a physio or a health professional or anything like that, but like, there's a lot of things. Same with Maddison yesterday. There's a lot of moments when you can see little flashes on several occasions of what they were doing really well on a sustained basis before. And in the first goal, it was actually Bentancur that won the ball back. He lost it momentarily, and then he won it back, and then he beat a few of their players, and he sort of engineered space out of nothing. He was crowded by 2 players, beat them, went on a run, hit the ball to Decky. Decky made a beautiful ball through for Sarr. And I know those are the things that like people are quick to forget about, like whenever they're having a pop at these boys, because there was, even with Maddison, like, okay, yeah, he was doing what he was like. You remember at the start of the year, he was like a conductor, wasn't he? Just like he had all the time. He felt like he had all the time in the world on the ball, and he could just pivot and turn and just do whatever he wanted, change direction. And he was doing that on occasions yesterday as well. And he lost the ball a couple of times doing that. But he was very successful. And he was a bit slower than I think probably he had been earlier in the season as well. But there was I think maybe there's an advantage to when you're in the stadium and you actually do kind of see the full perspective of what's happening and what's going around and where their options are. And I thought that there was an awful lot of good things that they were doing, as well as the mistakes. And I suppose then you contrast with like the things that I would say from a negative point of view before we got the winner and all our mentality changes in terms of like just being elated. Everybody where I was sitting was just really frustrated by Johnson, and just continually. I'm sorry, I was guilty of that big time, and that's the emotional part of being a supporter. And I was like that earlier with Werner too, because I think Werner's kind of turning into potentially a bit of a Johnson just on the left-hand side in terms of just like he does some really good stuff, and then it's like the finished product is just so unconvincing and lacks conviction. He did this sort of beautiful, right at the beginning of the second half, this sort of slaloming run. He checked inside. He could have released Bentancur on the left, but he and I was thinking, oh, brilliant. He's actually got a bit of confidence here. It looks like he's really back himself. And then the shot was just so weak. But so I don't know, like it's what we're saying. This is a journey, and we're bringing these players back. But there are players like Højbjerg coming off the bench, was the other thing I wanted to say, just mentioned, was just, again, highlighting where we are wanting to be, I suppose, after the next window in the summer. Hopefully we're in the Champions League and we can entice players, to even more, with more convincing kind of menu in front of what we've got to look forward to. But Højbjerg, I just was really nervous anytime the ball came anywhere near him. And I know that's probably a bit harsh, but he just doesn't seem to have the same quality. And it's just like if we're looking to be building a team that's actually a genuine challenger for the title, then it's those kind of players that you're really kind of thinking, okay, they've done a job, but it's time to sell players like him. And I think I'd love to see Werner take the opportunity because he's got a hell of an opportunity now. A great club with a lot of potential, and he's clearly got a lot of talent. So there's an awful lot of it must be psychological with him. And he's like, mate, if we've got the chance to buy him for 17 million, like if you take this chance, then it's a win-win for the club and for the players. So anyway, there's a lot of things to be really positive about. And
agreed.
Yeah.
But there's,
I mean, if Werner could shoot, he'd be the best player in the world.
Yeah. I think
sorry, go on. I know you've been trying to get this point.
It's not that good, to be fair. It's built up out of all proportion now. It's not going to land. So I think I agree 100% on all of the comments on Bentancur coming back from injury, major ACL, then he's had the ankle injury, and it's going to take time for him to get up to speed. Absolutely 100%. But I think there's another aspect to it is that means that he hasn't played in the Ange system. He hasn't had a pre-season. He hasn't, he's had 6 weeks worth of training maybe, and he's played 4 games? Is it 4 games since he come back? 5 games maybe?
Mm.
Listen, and he was in a side that played nothing like we play now. So it's going to take time for him to acclimatise to the way of playing, to get used to it, to get back up to speed. Listen, the guy is mustard. We saw that last year where, when he's fit and when he's on his game, the guy keeps the ball almost like Dembele used to keep the ball for us. He's going to be superb. And then I think you've got a question about how does the Bissouma, Bentancur, Sarr trio come together in terms of how do you rotate that? Because there'll be a lot of rotation next year. If we get into the Champions League, there's going to need to be rotation. So you need that level of quality to be able to rotate round. And I think it's a lovely problem to have amongst those three. Probably need another one in there, to be fair.
Agree, and this is your point on Højbjerg, Johnny. Like he's only in that team through circumstance, not through choice, and it's clear Ange does not see him as a key player anyway. But we shouldn't get on players' back when they're being forced to play a role they're not comfortable with, out of circumstance over choice. It's not like Højbjerg's going, "I demand, I play, I'm good enough." He's just doing the best he can. But I've got one question for you each from the YouTube questions today. So I know Deej is prepped for one of these, so I'll make sure that one does go to Deej. But we'll start with Rick Stew. He says the other side of the UEFA Champions League and Cups coin. Will Ange's inspiration, Langer's research, and importantly Levy's dollars set Spurs up with a squad of 25 capable of challenging on all fronts in August, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ange touched upon the concept of the squad to start with, that he's not looking for 25 starters. I think he's probably looking for about 15 to 18, and then other squad players like the Davieses, that are happy to be in the squad and could do a utility role. But I don't think we're that far off. I think this season we had incredible amount of injuries. Then we have AFCON and the Asian Cup. I mean, it's just like the perfect storm. Everything that could go wrong went wrong for us, losing players here, there, and everywhere. And we've still managed in a first season to be 4th. I think we need to make some changes, but I don't think there's as many as many think. I think Højbjerg will leave. I think Gilles will leave. I think we probably need to bring in, so therefore, at least a left winger, a centre midfielder, maybe a centre back, because we've only really got 3, and then 1 or 2 here or there. So I think maximum 5 changes. And looking at all the changes we've made this season, I think it's easily doable, and that would make us in a really, really strong position to go out on 3 fronts next season and really challenge. So I'm fairly confident that between the money that the club is clearly investing, because again, 200 million, we're investing in 10 million on a kid who won't even join till the summer, and even then, who knows when he's going to be likely ready to play in the Premier League. So clearly the club's funding it. We've got money coming in, and just convincing people to choose us over Bayern and Barcelona. Lange is clearly, well connected. I think, the future's bright.
Good. I would agree with you very much so. Deej, this one is for you. I know you've done some research on this one. There's 2 parts to it. How many of Spurs' new signings will qualify as homegrown in the future? Is part 1. And part 2 is, Celtic under Ange beat Aberdeen 9-0 away. Do you think Spurs have it in them to do likewise, home or away? And that's from Peter.
All right, so for the homegrown rule for people who are uninitiated, is basically a rule that says that a Premier League club, and also the rules are slightly different between the Premier League and the Champions League, but the basis of the rule is essentially the same, in that teams need a minimum number of players that have played for the club or been on the books of the club, specifically between the ages of 15 to 21 for at least 36 months or 3 consecutive seasons before they turn 21, or in containing the season in which they turned 21. And that part's really important because that's the part that allows for some of our signings to become homegrown, because obviously, because you can't buy a player before they turn 18, that's kind of the reason the rule's like that. So you can buy a player, like when they turn 18, they can play for you for 3 seasons and still become homegrown, which is actually what's happening with Sarr. So Sarr is our first signing that will become homegrown. I mean, I think that's pretty common knowledge at this point that Sarr is going to become a homegrown player. But not only will he be homegrown, he's also going to be club trained. And the difference between homegrown and club trained is homegrown means they're on the books of any team in the FA or the Welsh FA. And club trained means you're on that specific club's books between 15 and 21, same time frame. So players like Madison and Johnson, those are homegrown players because they were, grown in England, I guess. But they're not club trained, obviously, because they didn't play for Tottenham for 3 years before their 21st birthday. Valise will not be homegrown because we bought him when he was 19, so he won't have the time to get that 3rd season, which is a bit unfortunate. Also, loans abroad are fine. Like those, you can still get a year for that without, as long as you're registered with the FA as well. So that's why Sarr is able to become homegrown, because even though his first season with us was a loan back to Metz, he was still on our books and registered, so that counted as one of his 3 years. So Sarr will be homegrown, club trained. Bergvall, same thing. He will be homegrown, club trained in 3 years because he'll turn 19 during next season, 20 during the season after that, and then 21 in the 3rd season. So that's 3 consecutive seasons that he'll be on our books. And the last one will be the season he turns 21. Ashley Phillips will be homegrown and I believe club trained because I think he was 18 when the season started. Udogie won't be. And I think that's everyone who I think is close. Johnson's homegrown, not club trained. Madison's homegrown, not club trained.
So,
James, just a quick question there. What's the benefit of the club trained piece? Because I get the homegrown piece.
Club trained is for UEFA competitions in particular. You need to have at least 4 club trained players.
Got you.
Clear, thank you.
Which is something that I think are currently struggling with outside of Skip. And,
right, okay.
So that's why Whiteman's always in the squad.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Either Whiteman or Alston. They're the only reason they're on the books.
Makes sense.
And the punishment for not having enough is you can only register a reduced number of players for the competition.
Yeah,
is that right?
You can either register a player, and it's like you have a block of slots. You can think of it like having a bunch of blocks of slots, where you have 4 slots that are club trained players in a UEFA competition. You don't have to fill that up, but then you can't fill it up with someone else.
Oh, what about Phillips? Did you mention him?
Yeah, Phillips is going to be homegrown, club trained.
Got you. So
I think he's already homegrown, but he's not club trained yet.
So in terms of homegrown, we've got, looking at the squad, a lot of these are deadwood anyway, but you've got Roden, Phillips, Tanganga, Spence, Dyer. No, not Dyer, actually. He doesn't count, does he? There was a reason why. Whiteman, Austin. Davies didn't count because he was... Or did they change the rules? So he does count.
Homegrown, not club trained.
That's it. So Sarr will count. And then you've got Johnson will be homegrown, Spence... Sessignon, who cares about him? Forster's homegrown.
Yep.
And then you've got Maddison, homegrown, and we've got Skip, obviously, who's homegrown and club. So we need the club trained is where we have a bit of a issue. We need to get a couple more in. So I guess that's why they might look at Devine or Dorrington or I don't know, one of these players, Donnelly.
But those only need to be registered once they're past 21.
Okay.
So it doesn't really matter now.
Okay.
What'll probably end up happening is because we're looking at a younger type. We're probably not going to fill the club trained group this next season, unless I'm miscounting. But that's okay because we have a decent chunk of players that, like Stu said, won't necessarily be needing to be registered until they turn 21.
Right. Makes sense.
Cool.
So the second part of the question, you have to answer this one a bit more quickly so everyone can get around. But are we going to start smashing teams 9-0 soon?
It kind of goes back to the same thing I talked about with the Brighton game, is that I think that on the balance of play, we probably could have we could have smashed Brighton. We could have put 3-4 past them if the ball bounces a little bit differently. And we are getting to the point where we are getting our entire first team back. I think it's impossible to overstate the impact that Son has on this team, how good he is. I think that'll be a major boost to our goal scoring. Shock, amazing. I can't believe that adding the best finisher in world football will make us better at finishing. But there'll be games where we have tons of chances and we don't score at all, or we score once and we lose a game we feel like we should have won. But there will also be games where we create a bunch of chances and they all go in. It's I mean, as much as football's a tactics game, a lot of goals come down to a lucky bounce or two. And if we just get enough lucky bounces because we create so many chances, it gives us a better chance of getting a lot of those luckier bounces, as well as just creating moments of brilliance that don't necessarily require luck. But yeah, no, I think that based on the way that we played in the last game, I wouldn't be surprised if we were to ship 4 or 5 past the team before the end of the season.
If you just think back to the Luton game, that okay, in the end we got a very lucky last-minute winner. I think if you think back to the first 15 minutes, we could have scored about 4 goals. I think there's going to be one game that comes up soon where those go in, and we're going to hammer someone 6 or 7-0.
And I think the point there is that every time you hear Ange talk about where we really need to improve, final third. He keeps talking final third. He said we've got so much more improvement to do in the final third. We're nowhere near where he wants us to be there. So if we're creating all of these chances now, and then he's going to drive more of the training and focus around the clinical finish in that final third, we will take someone to pieces, at some point in the season. Before the end of the season, we'll have a 5 or 6er.
I do think we lack a Matuma type wide player in the squad, though. That adds, because you've got Son on one side, and like we said, Johnson and Kulu, they've got very good strengths for certain things, but they're not the type of player you're going to be like, yes, 15 goals a season. I can see that in them.
I can see Johnson doing that in a season.
Me too.
In another 12 months, mate, I tell you, he's got something about him. His control is unbelievable. He can take a ball out of the air, and he's got pace. Okay, he was a little bit, I guess, not confident enough with the first shot that he finished, but he took that. I thought in the ground. I thought he'd missed hit it, and it might have been going over when he took it from Sonny. But when I watched it again this morning, he controlled that beautifully, and he put it exactly where he wanted to. The fella's a talent, mate, without a doubt, and I'm going to hang my hat on that one. I'm going to die on that hill, and you can come and see me next year, and I'll be still sat on this hill with my Brennan Johnson t-shirt on.
No, finishing is definitely a strength of his, but it's I wish we could get his finishing.
I feel the same about Hill, by the way.
Yeah. You can take Hill.
I'm sitting on Sessignon Hill still.
Sorry, Jim.
Don't sit on Sessignon. He's made a crisp. You'll snap him.
Oh dear. Sorry, Jim.
I just say we need to get this data science team to figure out these player transfusions or infusions people were talking about, whatever the word is. Because if we could put Johnson's finishing with everything else Kulusevski does, I think we've got probably the best player in the world there. And his pace. Yeah.
Fast.
But next question I'll give to you. Got one each as well, Si and Johnny. But Si, I'll pass this one to you. So this is from DS on YouTube. The squad is mid-rebuild. It needs filling out, and even good players may need replacing, whether that's starters that end up rotating or as squad players for better squad players. The squad play demands, it's just a bit of a long question. The squad plays a demanding style. They will always be tired at the end of the game. This is normal after a 90-minute plus performance. The practice schedule will be tweaked with more rest days because more games. Honestly, I think more games and fewer practices might help the team next year. I think what he's going with this is it actually better to have a large squad with lots of games than it is these big breaks and people can't get into a rhythm and there's, not much rotation?
Yeah. So I think what playing once a week has allowed Ange to do this season is to start to build the foundations of what he wants to do with the team. And I think that's been a benefit for this year. I'm guessing if you talk to players, they much prefer playing than training. So, to get the match fitness and match sharpness, then you only get that through playing. And Andrew was talking about that when in the cup against Luton earlier on in the season, when he said you only really get to see the true player in a match situation where there is true pressure. You don't get to see that in training. So I would agree with the statement or the question. I think that what you then need to do is then need to think about how do you strengthen your first team so that those players that are currently first team starters then maybe become your bench strength. And that's how you build your bench strength, is by improving your first team. And I think that the tiredness piece is you get the depth into the bench. You saw you saw yesterday. You're bringing on Johnson, Son, and Bissouma. That's 3 quality substitutions to come off the bench with 20, 25, 30 to go. There's not a team in the world that's not going to be looking at it thinking, shit. So, that sort of quality coming off the bench. And then if you switch it around and say, right, okay, well, Sonny's a starter, obviously. So start Son on the left. Richarlison's still doing well down the middle. And then all of a sudden, at 20 minutes to go, you're bringing Werner on. You might hook Richarlison, stick Sonny in the middle, bring Werner on, or another left winger that we go out and buy, and you've got that strength in depth. So I think the tiredness question is a bit of a smokescreen because of the injuries and absences. It's shown that we haven't got the strength in depth on the bench, and that's why we've had to use players that probably wouldn't be getting that much of a look in anyway. And I think that the tiredness piece is a bit of a smokescreen. I don't think it's, as we get a better squad, better depth, I think that becomes a non-issue.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to add one thing, because I think the end of that question talks about whether we're ready for deep runs in every competition. And I think that honestly, I think most top 6 clubs at the beginning of the season are well equipped for deep runs in every competition. The issue is injuries, and every team's going to get injured. And if we have the injuries that we had at the start of the season, we're not going to be equipped to take deep runs in every competition, because we just won't have the rotation. We'll have Emerson Royale at center back again, or whatever happens.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's just luck of the draw on whether or not someone's ACL stays together or not. Injuries happen, but you just gotta hope you get lucky sometimes.
Yeah, and we saw that with Liverpool, the case study for that, right? That when they had their great years, Van Dijk was fit all season, and when he wasn't fit, they saw them struggling to get in the top 4, and it's just as part of it. But Johnny, the final question is for you, mate. I'm sorry, I can't. The username of the person who's put this in is 30 characters long, and it's all written as one word. So I'm not going to try pronounce it as a dyslexic. It will probably come out completely wrong. But is Ange's style sustainable, or are we going to struggle like Newcastle when we're in Europe? Our players look tired, and we're only playing 1 game a week. You're on mute, Johnny. You always had to do it once.
It's been a while.
Once an episode.
Johnny is back.
Come on, that's 2. That's harsh. Once every 3. I've upped my game.
You get the same unfair treatment that Romero does. You make 1 foul, and everyone says typical Romero. But
yeah. Exactly. If we were in the same room, I'd be kicking you all in the ass, like Romero as well.
Big words, Johnny. Big words.
Sorry. Yeah. Come on then. You're not even going to be at a game until April, pal. So you think you're safe over there in Switzerland? Sorry. Okay. Back
Touched a nerve here.
Back to 31 character names question. I would say in terms of tiredness and like if you're talking about how we are playing and are we sustaining kind of the energy levels through games, I don't really think that we're struggling from a fitness point of view when you're watching the games. I think there was something I read an article about us like we've so far conceded 8 goals after 90 minutes. Okay, so people would make a correlation between conceding late goals potentially and tiredness, and like out of the goals that we've, and apparently we only need to concede another 3 goals in the remaining games to equal the most in Premier League history, which is it's not a great stat to be fair, but we scored a fair few late goals. And I think when you delve in a little bit deeper, only I think there was obviously the game against Everton when it was a goal that made a difference in terms of points. And the other one was the Wolves game, which we went from winning 1-0 to losing 2-1. That was painful. So get back next week, hopefully. All of the other ones actually made absolutely no difference to the result. And clearly, anybody who has any idea about how Spurs play football now with Postecoglou, you're going to concede chances. It is how we play. There are, there's going to be opportunities. There will be mistakes. And I think when you're actually watching, like, especially as the players are gaining fitness, I mean, Richarlison's got some engine on him, and he's obviously one of our more senior players. But he just never stops running, and now he's doing that with great self-confidence as well in all aspects of his game. And I think as the boys who've coming back from the injuries get more fit, I'm not massively concerned. And as all of you guys were already saying, then in terms of strengthening the squad over the summer and building on what we've already done with the last couple of windows, I think that I don't think comparing us with Newcastle, it's a fair question, but I think that we're further down the road in some ways in terms of our recruitment, and we've obviously as a club got a little bit more pedigree in terms of there's I don't know, maybe that's I think are the players that we have, although there's quite a few young boys, there are players with probably more experience of playing at that higher level. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I just feel that we are actually, they've signed some really good players, but I think that as a squad we're better off than they are. And I think actually, although we're benefited from the fact that we're not in Europe this year, and thank God we're not in that Conference League. I'm so pleased that we didn't finish what was the 7th or whatever. Like, yeah, I think that even still Newcastle are probably where they should be after the number of games that we've played. So maybe a long way of saying I'm not really worried about it. I think that we are actually quite fit. The hamstring thing is obviously a question that we've all been a little bit concerned by, and people are saying that's the thing that happened to Celtic under Ange as well. So I don't know if that's something that you can become more robust in terms of you getting used to a regime and a demand. That is it something, I don't know, is it something that over time at Ange's clubs that it happened fewer or less often as
I think they dropped off after the initial, and I'm sure the medical team will be working on strengthening. That.
So I think Dee, we've got to wrap up. But Dee, you had one final point there. I think you were trying to make as well.
I have 2 points. One of which, part of the reason that Newcastle is struggling across all competitions is because they have one of the worst injury bugs I've seen in a while.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is honestly probably partially because they have so many games, but like even on top of that, they've just been extremely unlucky. And so I think looking at them is saying, oh, thin squad, not going to be able to compete across all fronts. I think it's a bit unfair. And it's not something we should worry too much about unless we have an injury crisis similar to the scope that they do, which, I mean, we kind of did earlier in the season, but that's not something that I am, because it's something that's just a little bit unlucky, honestly. Like I said, hopefully we come back next season more fit and ready to play all those games. The second thing I wanted to do is circle back to a thing that's been bothering me for a while about shout out to the referee for the first quarter of the game, calling a foul on someone backing into Vicario because it is a foul, and we've been saying it's a foul, and people have been, no, it's not a foul. It's a foul. You cannot impede the goalkeeper. And then after, they kept doing it anyway, and they stopped calling it. But we put our little annoying guy, James Madison, on the person who was trying to block him, and didn't let him touch Vicario, and it worked.
They tried it out, and then because the referee put his foot down, they knew they weren't going to get away with it, and we could play a normal game of football.
Yeah, but they did it again anyway.
Yeah, well, they true. Okay, actually, they did.
But like I said, we had our little annoying guy.
Yeah.
Well, why is it they only do it against us? I don't see other teams doing it in other games.
Well, they saw other teams get away with it against us, and not get away with it against others.
Games.
Yeah. We've got to wrap up there, guys. But I would say, anyone listening who would like, we love reading out your questions and going through them. So if you enjoy it, you can put your question under this video and just mark it as a question for the next pod, and we'll read it out. Or just follow us on Twitter, and we put a post out the day before each recording where you can ask a question as well. So just
I just have one last thing. I've got to do it, Jim, and brag about getting the last minute winner in the prediction right.
You did. You did. And yeah,
well done, Stu. Well done.
Nice.
The only difference is
Jim always does it. I'm going to do it too.
Yeah, I always go 1-0 down at half time. Ange has his team talk, come back, late winner every time. And it's been right for 15 points this season. So there you go. Right,
still waiting for that double header.
Yeah, we're still waiting for that one.
Yeah.
But we'll do the Wolves preview probably on Wednesday or Thursday. We'll figure out when's the best day.
Got to be Valentine's Day, hasn't it? Really, nothing else to do.
Yeah. Right, up the Spurs.
Up the
Johnny
Spurs.
Spurs.